Hey guys, Pastor Gabriel Padilla here again. I want to share another dream that I had a bunch of years back. This was a couple years after that 2012 period of time where the Lord had kind of woken me and my family up with a series of dreams, really emphasizing the idea of preparedness for coming judgment upon the nation of America. And there had been a bit of a lull in about a year or so since I had had any dreams, but I remember recalling this one dream I had where I went to sleep, and in the dream, I woke up in the middle of a small town, kind of, old school Americana style town. And they were in the middle of having a festival that was kind of honoring that town's history and legacy. And there were booths, and there were tents, and there were games, and it just seemed like old school hometown kind of fun. And so, in the middle of this whole town, my family and I, and a few other people that I knew we knew in the dream, but I couldn't recognize their face in reality and tell you who they were in reality. But there was a community of people there, a bunch of believers, and we were helping to set up this event that was happening in the middle of the town. And we were building booths and putting up signs. And dead in the middle of town, there was this building, and the building represented something important to the town. Now, I remember there were walkie-talkies around. A lot of people had some walkie-talkies in their hands, and they were communicating back and forth, kind of just coordinating the opening day of this festival, of this little carnival or whatever it was. And I remember they were communicating also with people who were up high on this hill. And in these hills, you can see east and west. And so I remember that they were, for some reason, communicating with people who were up high and looking out away from the town, seeing if there was anything coming. So back into the town that's the point in the center of this dream. I remember as we were setting up, I hear over one of those walkie talkies, "There's something coming, there's something coming," and everyone stopped who had a walkie talkie, and they're like, "What?" And the people who were up in the high hills looking outward said something about danger coming. Now, at that point in the dream, the perspective changed, almost like as if you were flying over the United States in a airplane where you can see the whole map. And all of a sudden, you saw on the map armed forces on both the west and the east coast, with tanks and with ships and with aircraft carriers and planes and all kinds of weapons on either coast. And it was almost like seeing a strategic war map or a graphic that you would see like on CNN or MSNBC. And that was happening. And they were communicating that that was happening through the walkie talkie. So after my perspective went back down from that zoomed out view, I remember people coming to me and my family and our friends and saying, "What do we do? What do we do?" And, we were like a little bit shocked as to what to do. So in the middle of this celebration of the history and heritage of this town, everything kind of got put on stall, and the event never happened. So everyone was now looking for what to do in the midst of this crisis. And so I saw the center building in the middle of town, and I remember looking through the basement windows and seeing a glimmer of light. And so I felt compelled in the dream to actually go into this basement and go through the crawl space underneath this building. And this building was very important to the town for some reason. We all had kind of just had a sense of that. So as I'm crawling through what was a basement, but that had been filled in with mud and dirt and debris, it looked like maybe a flood had washed a bunch of stuff in through there. As I'm crawling through this mud and dirt and debris, I recognize that, man, this is dangerous. I could get, a nail, I could get tetanus, I could get cut up or whatever. But I felt compelled to keep crawling into this basement. And as I'm crawling through this basement, I end up seeing another sub basement in this building, but there was almost like a hatch door that kind of dropped down into it. And as I finally reached it, and I was getting cut up and dirty, and I could barely breathe because it had been filled into about the size of a crawl space. I remember finally getting down into the sub basement, and when I looked in the sub basement, there was this old Cold War era fallout shelter, and it had radios, and it had water storage, and it had bunks, and it had a functional bathroom and electricity. And it looked old, had a little bit of cobwebs, but it looked like it had been specifically set apart as a provision for this town in their time of crisis, and everything was there that you can imagine that you needed during one of these crazy times of crisis. And so after seeing this, I get back up into the top basement and crawl back out. And again, being dirty, being cut up, and I crawl out of this basement, and everyone's standing around. What do we do? What do we do? The invasion's coming. And I said, listen, there's provision down there. There's things that will supply for us and that will protect us and hide us in this time of crisis. And but you have to crawl through this long, dirty, crazy, dangerous basement to get to it. And I remember so many people were like, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it. We'll go in. And my family was with me, and they were already getting into this basement and crawling down there. But some people were like, how dangerous is it? I don't want to get dirty. I don't want to get cut. I don't want to get injured. But I kept trying to compel them, listen, if it's going to save your life to get into that sub basement, to go through that dirty basement would be worth it. And I just couldn't convince the majority of people, even though a lot of people initially said, hey, if there's provision to protect us down there, I'll go. Once they saw what it cost to get to the sub basement, a lot of people turned away and said, you know what, I'll figure this out on my own. And as people were making that decision, whether to stay outside and trust in their own resources or to go inside and trust in the provision that had been set aside for them, while they were waffling in that position, over the radios, you heard the people who were up in the hills say, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming. And as they said that, I went up to that zoomed out view, to that map view again, and all those forces that were lined up on the coastal areas of the United States all of a sudden just rushed in. And as they rushed in, I woke up from my dream. And yet again, you have one of these experiences that you've never really had before, and it being so vivid that I woke up and I was just very shocked as to what I saw. Now, that dream actually happened twice. I went right back to bed, and that dream, in a more condensed form, continued to happen that same night. So I felt like the Lord was really compelling me to pay attention to this dream. So that was the dream I had. Now, I'm not going to say this is the fulfillment of it, but I will tell you that since that time that I've had that dream, the Lord has led us through his divine guidance and through his calling into ministry to a small town in rural America. And I didn't know this when we moved here, but they have a huge celebration in the middle of the year around 4th of July called Heritage Days, and they celebrate the history of their town. So when I recognized that happened, it called to remembrance this dream that I had, because we didn't come to this small town for the sake of, running to the hills. The Lord called us here for ministry. We were simply following what the Lord had for us as a family unit and as a ministry family. So, unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize that maybe that portion of the dream was being fulfilled, by following the calling of the Lord. And so, as I've been kind of meditating over that dream for a lot of the past few years, I recognize that that's exactly how the Lord operates in times of crisis. He always provides for the remnant of believers that are ready and submissive to his will. But that provision often comes at a cost. It comes at uncomfortability. Like if the Lord's going to say, hey, I'm going to provide for you, there's safety here, but you have to go through this dangerous portion. And he gives us the choice to say, hey, is it worth it to get a little bit of dirt now on my shoulders and maybe some cuts and scrapes and bruises now, so that I know that I will be in the place where the Lord will protect me? That's something he allows us to choose and work out in our own faith walk. But I just want to encourage you guys to maybe consider this dream and see what the Lord is saying to you. And yet again, if you guys have any dreams or visions or words of insight, words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us, feel free to comment in the comments down below. And we would love to just have that interaction and dialogue. But God bless you guys. I pray that you guys are encouraged, and I pray that you guys are challenged to stand boldly in this time of uncertainty, because our God is still on the throne. He's still in control, and he is utterly concerned with the safety of his people. God bless.